Unexpected resistance is one of the clearest and most painful signs that God is refining you, not rejecting you. It doesn't arrive gently and it never asks permission. It shows up in the form of opposition, delays, closed doors, and unexpected conflict. It feels like everything that used to flow now fights you. People start turning their back. But let me tell you, just because resistance shows up doesn't mean God walked away. In fact, resistance is often the evidence that you're headed in the right direction. You only feel the wind when you're moving forward. If you were standing still, the wind wouldn't push against you. The pressure is not proof of abandonment. It's confirmation that you're advancing towards something greater than you've ever walked in before. God doesn't allow resistance because he wants to punish you. He allows it to polish you. To refine means to take away impurities. Resistance has a way of stripping off pride, ego, insecurity, fear, and false support. When everything's easy, we don't grow roots, we float. But when resistance shows up, we're forced to dig deeper. Resistance compels you to tap into strength you didn't know you had, to call on God in ways you never had to before. That resistance becomes a sacred tool, a holy pressure. It doesn't feel good, but it does good. It's resistance that builds muscle. It's resistance that stretches your capacity. It's resistance that teaches you to pray when you don't feel like it, to keep moving when you don't see results, and to trust God when nothing is making sense. Some of the resistance you're facing isn't even about where you are, it's about where you're going. The enemy doesn't waste his energy attacking someone who isn't carrying something valuable. If you weren't carrying purpose, you wouldn't be catching this much pressure. Hell doesn't fight what doesn't pose a threat. So when the warfare intensifies, when the resistance increases, when you feel like you're walking uphill against a storm, that's not a sign that you're failing. That's a sign that you're carrying something sacred. God allows resistance to grow your resilience. He permits it so you learn how to endure, how to fight, and how to win in the spirit before the blessing ever manifests in the natural. And don't be surprised when resistance comes from unexpected places. Sometimes the ones closest to you become the voices of doubt. Friends who once cheered you on start pulling away. Family members don't understand the vision God gave you. The people you thought would walk with you all the way suddenly disappear when the road gets rough. That resistance is painful, but it's part of the refining. God will use it to show you who's really with you for the mission and who is just with you for the moment. He will allow resistance in relationships so you're not dragging dead weight into your destiny. Not everyone can go where God is taking you. And some of the resistance you're feeling is God's way of detaching you from what would have destroyed you later. Even your own emotions will become a battlefield. Resistance won't just come from people or circumstances. It will rise up in your mind. Fear will whisper that you're not good enough. Doubt will try to drown out your confidence. Anxiety will tell you to quit before you start. And that internal resistance is just as real, just as fierce. But again, God is not rejecting you. He's refining you. He is training your mind for battle. He is teaching you how to silence fear with faith, how to answer doubt with declarations, how to rebuke anxiety with truth. This kind of resistance is not meant to break you. It's meant to build a warrior within you. You may feel like you're being stretched to your limit, but that stretching is spiritual preparation. Have you ever noticed how God will allow tension in your life right before a blessing? You start to think something is wrong, but it's actually a divine setup. The tension is the test. Can you keep your integrity when you're misunderstood? Can you still walk in purpose when nothing is going right? Can you still praise when your heart is breaking? That resistance is making you ready. It's not the enemy winning. It's God working. Refining isn't comfortable, but it's necessary. And if you don't quit during the fire, you'll come out as pure gold. So the next time you feel resistance, don't run, don't retreat, don't question your worth or your calling. Instead, recognize it for what it is, a holy signal that something powerful is on the way. A breakthrough doesn't come without a battle. Promotion doesn't come without pressure. And miracles don't show up without some form of resistance first, showing you what needs to be removed. You're not being rejected. You're being refined. The fire you feel now is preparing you for the favor you're about to walk in. Keep pressing, keep praying, keep trusting, because when the refining is done, the reward will be undeniable. When everything around you feels like it's crumbling, when the structures you've depended on begin to collapse, when your plans unravel thread by thread, when your sense of control disappears, you might assume that you're being punished, forgotten, or cursed. But what if the falling apart is the very evidence that God is at work? What if the chaos is divine construction in disguise? God doesn't always announce his rebuilding with a clear blueprint. Sometimes it looks like confusion. Sometimes it looks like destruction. But he's not tearing things down to leave you broken. He's clearing the ground to build something stronger, more stable, more in line with his purpose for your life. You see, we often build our lives around what we think we need. Careers that look good on paper, relationships that seem comfortable, routines that feel safe. But God sees the cracks we ignore. He sees the weak foundation beneath the surface of our success. And sometimes in his mercy, he allows what we built to fall apart, not to shame us, but to save us. Because he knows that if he doesn't interrupt it, it will collapse under pressure later. So yes, things may be falling apart, but it might be because God is removing everything that can't carry the weight of where he's taken you next. Rebuilding doesn't begin with construction, it begins with demolition. Before something new can rise, the old must come down. That's why the season you're in feels so painful. That's why it feels like loss after loss. Like every time you get back on your feet, something else knocks you down. But demolition is not the end, it's the first step. Don't confuse temporary ruin with permanent defeat. The dust you see now is the proof that God is working. When walls fall, vision expands. When idols break, truth rises. God is not out to hurt you. He's out to help you grow. And sometimes growth only happens after the ground has been shaken. In these moments, when everything feels fragile, we tend to ask, why me? But maybe the better question is, what is God making room for? What in your life has taken priority over him? What have you clung to that was never meant to stay? What have you leaned on that can no longer support the weight of your calling? God is not cruel. He is strategic. If he allowed it to fall, it's because he's preparing to rebuild something better in its place. And not just better in your eyes, better in alignment with your destiny, better for your spiritual health, better for your long-term purpose. Some of the most painful breakdowns are divine breakthroughs in disguise. It's in the falling apart that we learn to let go. Let go of our ego. Let go of our false sense of control. Let go of attachments to people who were never assigned to our destiny. Let go of timelines we created without consulting God. And in that letting go, we create space. Space for God to do what only he can do. Space for restoration, for healing, for transformation. Some of us are so full of our own plans that God has to empty our hands before he can fill them. So when it all falls apart, don't panic. Pay attention. Because the clearing is often the sign that God is preparing to fill you with something you never imagined. And the rebuilding process doesn't always come quickly. It's not a snap of the fingers. It's slow. It's deliberate. It tests your patience. You'll have to wait while he lays the foundation. You'll have to trust when nothing looks like progress. You'll have to believe when you don't see bricks, only blueprints. And that's the hardest part, isn't it? Believing while you're still standing in the ruins. But let me remind you, God is a master builder. He doesn't waste time. He doesn't waste materials. And he doesn't waste pain. Every tear you've cried, every heartbreak you've endured, every disappointment you've survived, it's all being used in the rearranged into something stronger. Sometimes what's falling apart isn't just around you, it's within you. You feel like your confidence is broken. Your joy is fractured. Your sense of identity is scattered. But even then, God is not afraid of the mess. He sees the shattered pieces of your heart and doesn't run from them. He gathers them, and he doesn't just put them back the same way. He reshapes them. He makes you new from the inside out. You thought you needed to be strong all the time, but he's showing you that your brokenness is where his strength is perfected. So don't hide the pieces. Hand them over. God does his best work with broken people. And while you're in the middle of it, while it's still messy, still unfinished, people around you may not understand. They'll look at your life and see ruins, but God sees the restoration. They'll say you've lost everything, but God knows you're about to gain something that can't be taken away. Don't be discouraged when others don't get the process. This rebuilding isn't for their validation, it's for your transformation. You weren't made to stay broken, you were made to rise again. And what God is rebuilding will be stronger than what you lost. The beauty of God's rebuilding is that it never stops at the surface. He's not interested in appearances. He's after authenticity. He wants to build character, not just comfort. He wants to deepen your faith, not just increase your platform. He wants to root you in purpose, not just surround you with temporary pleasure. That's why the process takes time. That's why it hurts. That's why it feels like a storm. because he's not just giving you a breakthrough, he's changing you so that you can sustain the breakthrough when it comes. When you finally step back and look at the new structure, your new mindset, your new strength, your new peace, you'll realize it was all worth it. The falling apart was necessary. The pain had a purpose. The confusion was part of the plan. You won't even want the old version back, because what God rebuilt is so much better than anything you could have created on your own. So hold on during the teardown. Trust him during the rebuilding. Because when God is finished, not only will you rise, you'll rise stronger, wiser, and unshakable. There comes a time in every believer's life when heaven goes quiet. The prayers you've poured out with trembling lips seem to echo into silence. The scriptures feel distant. The spiritual highs you've known are suddenly flatlined into a dry, desolate wilderness. You check your heart. You check your walk. You even start questioning your worth. But what if I told you that spiritual silence is not abandonment? It's often the prelude to divine movement. When God is about to do something powerful in your life, he often goes quiet, not because he's distant, but because he's watching. A teacher is always silent during the test. That silence doesn't mean absence. It means observation. God isn't ignoring you. He's assessing what you've learned in the dark, what you've retained in faith, and what you believe when there's no sign, no sound, no spotlight. And then comes the resistance. Everything that was smooth suddenly meets friction. The path you were sure of is now full of obstacles. People who once supported you now doubt you. Doors that were open start to shut in your face. You start wondering, God, why would you lead me here only for things to go wrong? But resistance is not rejection. It's refining. Just like fire refines gold, the pressure you're feeling is designed to reveal your purity, your passion, and your purpose. God is not punishing you. He is proving you. Every storm is sculpting your stamina. Every no is chiseling your discipline. Every disappointment is tempering your trust. This is not failure, it's formation. Sometimes it truly feels like everything is falling apart. Plans crumble, relationships shatter, dreams feel like they're dissolving right before your eyes. But what if what looks like destruction is actually divine reconstruction? Before a building can be restored, sometimes it must be torn down, not to harm it, but to lay a stronger, more stable foundation. God is not in the business of letting you collapse. He is in the business of rebuilding you better than you were before. The breakdown is often a setup for the breakthrough. It's in the ruins of your expectations that God writes the blueprint for something greater. So don't curse the crumbling. Embrace it, knowing that behind the mess is a masterpiece in the making. Tests don't come to destroy you, they come to reveal what's real in you. It's easy to shout about faith when you're on the mountaintop, but the true measure of belief is forged in the valley. That's where the real you shows up. When the lights go out and no one is watching, will you still pray? When no one claps for your obedience, will you still obey? When the answer is delayed and the journey is hard, will you still trust? God's tests are never random. They're customized to uncover your capacity. They're divine diagnostics to check your readiness. What He has in store for you requires strength, maturity, humility, and faithfulness. You don't get to skip the test and still walk in the promotion. The test is proof that the promise is near. There's a strange loneliness that often hits right before God elevates you. It's a holy isolation. Friends start fading. Circles shrink. Conversations dry up. You feel like you're being unplugged from everything familiar. But that separation is not accidental. It's surgical. Before God takes you higher, He removes the weights that can't go with you. You're not being abandoned, you're being consecrated. When God wants to do something new in you, He often isolates you so He can work uninterrupted. Don't fight the loneliness. It's part of the process. Sometimes the cocoon feels like confinement, but it's really transformation. And when the time is right, you won't recognize yourself. You'll be stronger, bolder, and ready to soar. Delay is one of the most frustrating tools God uses to develop us. We live in a world of instant gratification, but God works in divine timing. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. Delay is not denial, it's preparation. God is not just preparing the promise for you, He's preparing you for the promise. If He gave it too soon, you wouldn't be ready. You might mishandle it, misplace it, or mistake it for something it's not. But in the waiting, God is sharpening you. He's strengthening your character. He's deepening your faith. The wait is where the warrior is forged. So instead of despising the delay, use it. Learn in it. Grow in it. Trust that God's timing is always perfect, even when it feels painfully slow. And then there are the closed doors, rejection letters, missed opportunities, friendships that ended without closure. You prayed, you fasted, you believed, and yet the door slammed shut. But not every closed door is the devil. Sometimes it's God's hand protecting you from what you can't see. A closed door might feel like rejection, but it's really redirection. God knows what's behind that opportunity, and if it would have harmed you, derailed you, or distracted you, He'll shut it without explanation. You don't need to understand every no. You just need to trust that if God allowed it to close, there's something better prepared for you. Every denied access is divine protection in disguise. Stress is not always a bad sign. In fact, the greatest pressure often precedes the greatest promotion. Think of a woman in labor. The pain intensifies right before the delivery. And so it is in the spirit. The attacks get heavier, the resistance stronger, the warfare fiercer right before the blessing breaks through. God allows the pressure to stretch your spirit. You're not being punished, you're being positioned. That stress is not to destroy you, but to push out of you what God placed in you. Your destiny is crowning. That pain is proof that something powerful is about to be birthed. Don't give up in the push. Don't quit in the contraction. You're closer to your breakthrough than you think. Loss is one of the hardest things to make sense of, especially when you feel like you've already given so much. A job gone, a relationship lost, a loved one passed away. It feels like subtraction. But in the kingdom, loss often precedes gain. Sometimes God has to clear your hands so he can place something new in them. What you thought was essential, God saw as a hindrance. And though it hurts now, he's not removing to harm you, he's removing to renew you. He's preparing you for what's next, and some things can't come until others are gone. Trust that even in loss, God is adding to your life in ways you can't yet see. There comes a point in the test when you feel like you're at the end of yourself. Your prayers turn into groans. Your strength is gone. Your patience is thin. That's when most people want to quit. But that's also when miracles are closest. Your extremity is God's opportunity. When you're out of options, out of ideas, and out of strength, that's when grace rushes in. That's when breakthrough shows up. God waits for those moments not to torment you, but to teach you that your strength was never the source. He was. At the end of you is the beginning of him. So when you feel like you can't take another step, take one more anyway. That's where the breakthrough lives. Just beyond your breaking point, you may not understand the season you're in. You may feel stretched, tested, exhausted, and even forsaken. But don't confuse testing with abandonment. God is closer than he's ever been, even when you can't feel him. He's watching how you respond. He's seeing if you'll worship in the wilderness, if you'll trust when nothing makes sense, if you'll believe when there's no evidence. This is not punishment. This is preparation. This is divine testing before elevation. And if you hold on, if you stay faithful, if you don't give up, you'll see the breakthrough. You'll see the reward. Because God always finishes what he starts. And he never tests what he doesn't intend to use.